How would you promote a flower subscription CSA from start to finish? All the different things you have to think about. That's what today's episode is about. And I actually got interviewed on another podcast to answer that question. So today you're going to hear that recording from that interview in this podcast. It's kind of a co-collaboration with the Dirt on Flowers podcast. I'm super excited to share it with you. It turned out really well. Let's get started.
Hey there, this is Corinna Bench, and welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast. In today's market, it's not enough to just grow your product. You've got to know how to sell it too. Welcome to the My Digital Farmer podcast, where we reveal online marketing strategies and tips to help farmers like you get better and more confident at marketing. Learn how to find more customers, increase your sales, and build a strong brand for your farm. Let's start the show.
Well, welcome to episode 254 of the My Digital Farmer podcast. I'm your host, Corinna Bench, one of the farmers at Shared Legacy Farms out in Elmore, Ohio. I'm also the founder of MyDigitalFarmer.com, which is all about trying to help other farmers like you get more confident in your marketing and sales strategies so that you can grow a profitable business. Can I get an amen? Yes, welcome to the show, everyone, especially to all of my regular listeners and binge listeners alike. Welcome back. If you are new to the podcast, thanks for checking me out. And I hope that you get a lot out of today's episode. I have a feeling that you will. If you want to learn more about how to be a savvy farm marketer, I want you to, first of all, subscribe to the show, but also go check out some of my back archived episodes, especially episode 1 through 10. I tell people to start at the beginning because I did design them when I first began so that they could be an onboarding ramp into the marketing fundamentals. But another great place to learn this is to subscribe to my email list, because when you do, you're going to get a weekly email from me, actually probably a little bit more frequent than that, for the first 3 months. And I'm going to walk you through the roadmap through the marketing jungle. I'm going to share resources with you. I'm going to share the key fundamental tips you need to know. I'm going to tell you who you need to be following, what you need to be doing first. I'm going to give you some quick wins. It's so good. I have so many farmers who are like, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much from you. So get on that list. Subscribe by going to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. Got it? That's super easy to remember. mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe. Today's episode is sponsored by my friends at LocalLine. Make the switch to LocalLine and scale your farm business. LocalLine is the all-in-one sales platform for farmers and food hubs. Increase your sales and streamline your processes with features including e-commerce, inventory management, subscriptions, online payments, price lists, and more. Now, unlike many generic e-commerce platforms, LocalLine is actually built for selling local food online. So whether you're a CSA farmer like us, or you sell meat, or you run a food hub, or you sell wholesale, or offer a herd share, LocalLine has the tools and features that you'll need to succeed. Subscriptions start as low as $49 a month with no setup fees, and there are no sales percentages. Plus, if you join LocalLine today, your onboarding manager will help get your storefront migrated at no cost. You'll be up and running in no time. And you guys, their service is outstanding. Bonus, as a podcast listener, LocalLine is also offering a free premium feature for 1 year with your subscription when you use my coupon code MDF2024. So any premium feature that you want, you get to choose. Make the switch today. Go to mydigitalfarmer.com/LocalLine and then enter in that coupon code MDF2024 to get that free premium feature. And now back to the show. And I'm back. All right, there's so much to talk about today. I can't wait to share the interview of the podcast with you because it's so good. But before I get into that, let me just share a few quick announcements because there's a lot going on this month. First of all, some of you have been asking me, how did the spring plant sale promotion go? I talked about that in last week's episode. So if you haven't listened to it, go check that out. It's episode 253. And I break down how to put together a spring plant sale promotion. It went fantastic. So it launched this past weekend, and we hit our sales goals number within the first 60 minutes. So we still have a few more spots or a few more things, people can buy. And we have another 15 days in our promotion as of the time of this recording. But we had an amazing run. So I just wanted to let all of you guys know it was amazing. And what felt so good about it was that most of the sales did indeed come in on the very first day. So yay for promotions and launches and making a big rah-rah deal of things and building up hype, because that worked. So that was that. Second of all, I wanted to make sure you knew about a webinar that I am co-leading with Local Line on March 25th at noon Eastern Standard Time. It'll run about an hour, and it's called Maximizing E-commerce Success, Crafting Offers to Boost Farm Sales. And the whole purpose of this webinar is to teach you how to create more effective offers that are going to drive your leads and your customers to your sales platform in the first place. Building offers is a whole skill set in and of itself. In fact, I have a 30-day project inside of Farm Marketing School where you learn how to do this in detail. But this webinar with Local Line is kind of a teaser or a hint of that to kind of teach you some of the basics. So if you want to learn how to build better offers and what some of those formulas of offers are, and we're also going to encourage those who come to share what have been some of the ideas of offers that have worked with them, with their audience. It's going to be a crowdsourcing kind of webinar as well. Local Line is going to talk about Local Line at the end for a little bit, but that's not the main purpose, right? Like the main purpose is to educate farmers on how to sell better. So whether you have Local Line or not, I encourage you to come to the webinar and learn from both of us. And we're going to share some kind of tricks that you can do in your actual store to make it more likely for those offers to land with your clients. If you want to register for that, or maybe you just want to watch the recording if you can't come live on March 25th at noon, you can register at mydigitalfarmer.com/offer webinar. Okay, offer webinar, and sign up, and then we'll send you all the details, and I'll make sure that you get the recording as well if you can't make it. Okay, so that was kind of the first announcement I wanted to make you aware of. The second one is that I want to make sure you know about Farm Marketing School. And this is my online monthly membership for farmers where I am teaching you the fundamentals of farm marketing, but I'm also guiding you through 30-day projects where every month your goal is to build one marketing asset for your marketing machine. And I've got at least 10 in there right now. So some of the projects include doing a makeover of the homepage of your website. There's the weekly email challenge. There's the nurture email sequence challenge. There's one called the promotion planning calendar. You build your promotion plan, setting up your Google business profile and getting it optimized, building your first lead magnet, all of these different key things that you need to have in place to have an effective sales funnel. I teach them to you inside of Farm Marketing School. And you can subscribe and join any time of month. You can cancel anytime. So I have farmers that are coming in and staying 4 or 5 months at a time. Some are staying 1 month and then just taking one class and then canceling. It's really up to you. But I'm having fun with it because I'm experimenting with how I'm actually doing Farm Marketing School. It's my big focus project for the next at least 6 months because I want to get the offer right. When I first put it out into the world, I pitched a certain fulfillment plan, right? Like, this is how it's going to work every month and how I'm going to interact with you. And now I'm trying to tweak that a little bit. I want to make it so that farmers are actually interacting with each other more, networking with each other. So I've just adjusted it. And at least through the next 6 months, I'm going to be experimenting with a monthly Zoom webinar where we all get together and can kind of talk and collaborate and mastermind together. So I want to kind of see if that works. I'm going to experiment with a book study, probably with some one-to-one coaching, mindset stuff. So if you want to kind of be a part of this journey as I develop this new version of Farm Marketing School and you want to be in on that, I want to invite you to come into this community. There's 24 farmers in there right now as of the time of this recording. And I am so excited to bring them together as one community, to inspire each other, to hold each other accountable, and just see where this goes. So if you'd like to try this out for a month, come inside, pick one marketing project that you can work on with me. And it's a DIY program, so you are, following the project plan. There's a planner with every single class. There's an actual recorded workshop, and then there are some kind of resource pack. So it's usually examples or a template pack that you can use to get started on building your own version of it. Now, these 30-day project builds are DIY, so you're going through the process yourself, but I do provide that monthly Zoom support. And like I said, I'm going to be playing around with some other live elements so that we can all interact with each other more. I think that's the power when we create a community. That's when we actually grow. So I want to experiment with that. If you want to come in and check it out for a month and see what the magic is, please head over to mydigitalfarmer.com/FMS for Farm Marketing School. That's mydigitalfarmer.com/FMS. And I'm really keen to support you and develop you and inspire you, and for you to do that to me too. It's a two-way street, my friends. All right. Let's get to the show. You ready? Today's episode is going to be fun because this is actually a recording of an interview that I did on another farming podcast known as The Dirt on Flowers. Now, if you don't know about The Dirt on Flowers, this is a podcast for flower farmers and farm business owners. And it's hosted by two different flower farm entrepreneurs, Shannon Allen and Lyndsay Biehl. They're both flower farms in Ohio. They're both friends. And in this podcast, they kind of share the real dirt on flower farming. So they talk about business, growing techniques, behind the scenes stuff, what it takes to run a profitable flower farm. Now, I've had Lyndsay Biehl on the show before. She and I recorded episode 209. And if you haven't listened to that, you need to go listen to it because it's really, really good, because she kind of showcases how the real thing that you sell when you're selling flowers is not the flowers, you're selling inspiration. And I think this is why she is so good at what she does, is because all of her messaging has that inspiration shining through it. Shannon, I've worked with Shannon. I've actually audited her website for her business at one point. And so it was just really fun to get together with them for their audience. And they invited me onto their show because they wanted me to talk about flower subscriptions, flower CSAs, and specifically, how would you market a flower CSA? What are the things you have to think about from start to finish in terms of attracting the right audience and avatar, identifying who your avatar is and understanding them, all the way through the sales funnel, and how do you warm them up, and how do you actually try to make revenue from this kind of a business? What kind of marketing do you need to put out there? It was so fun. It went longer than I expected. It went over an hour. These women are incredible. So first of all, I just want to tell you to go check out their podcast, because I subscribe to the show and they're hilarious. They have such good chemistry. It's very down to earth and it's very practical. So especially if you're a flower farm, you need to know about them. After we finished recording for their show, I said, hey, this was really good. What about letting me use this recording and put it on my show? And then we can kind of cross promote. People can become aware of your podcast on my show, and people can become aware of who I am on their show. And I just thought the content was so good that it really belonged on my platform too. So if you do subscribe to the Dirt on Flowers podcast and you've already heard this episode, it did drop into their podcast player last week, then you don't need to listen to this again. But if you haven't, this is really, really good. So without further ado, I'm going to switch us over to the recording of the Dirt on Flowers podcast episode with Lyndsay and Shannon, and I hope you find some value out of it. I'll check back in with you after it's all over and say goodbye. Here we go.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of the Dirt on Flowers. Normally we chit chat, but I'm not chit chatting today because I am so excited about today's guest. She's dancing behind the scenes with us. And I think might be the only podcaster that has better intro music than us. So
I know. I love it.
Best. I mean,
it's very recognizable.
It is.
It's like, yes, I
It is.
agree.
So today on the podcast, we have our friend Corinna Bench of My Digital Farmer. Corinna, welcome. I'm so glad you're
Welcome.
here.
Oh my God, I totally want to laugh. So
Oh.
glad to be here, you guys. Thank you for loving on my podcast music. I love it too.
Oh, yeah. Just your podcast. I mean, Lyndsay and I, for many years, have discussed things that we heard in your podcast. So it's really cool that we get to have you on because you've been, a little bit of a source of inspiration for Lyndsay and I too. So
yeah,
this is very cool.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored to be here.
Well, good.
Ooh,
I do have to say, you did. No, you were on our guest list. Like one of the first people, I think, if we go back to our Trello board, we were like, Corinna, you think Corinna? I don't know. We were like, had 3 episodes and we're like, well, I'll check in like we get closer to 80.
I was going to say, what took so long?
Oh no, we needed some practice. So glad to have you here. So I know today marketing is one of those topics that it comes up a lot in the insiders group and with our live Zooms. We get a lot of questions about marketing. And so I want to say, I mean, Shannon and I, we do a pretty good job with marketing on our farms. I think we do a good job, but to really dig in and give somebody like a real answer, I don't, Corinna's you're going to excel at this. So first of all, I met Corinna because I was on her podcast. We had so much fun. And afterwards I emailed her. I'm like, I just want to be friends with you. Like, we both kind of had the same thing. We're like, can we be friends? And so we've just sort of had this relationship that's like been since then. And so glad that you're on here today. So Corinna, just sort of tell everybody about yourself if they don't know who you are. Tell us a little bit about your business, like your farming business, and how you've like grown into this, online platform with My Digital Farmer as well.
Sure. So I am one of the owners with my husband at Shared Legacy Farms out in Elmore, Ohio, which is just a little bit outside of Toledo in Northwest Ohio. We have been in business since 2008. We're an certified organic vegetable farm. And our claim to fame is our CSA. We have an 18-week season that runs June through October. That's kind of our main gig. We do have a few wholesale accounts, but over the years, we have perfected the art of managing and inspiring a community of food lovers and local farm lovers, teaching people how to eat, changing the way people eat, and I guess showing them the story behind food. Sometimes I talk about how I feel like I'm growing my own little church. I used to be a youth minister long ago in my prior life before I met my husband and got married. And so I just have some skills, I think, in creating community and educating and inspiring people. So yeah, we have this amazing group of families that stand behind us that we grow our vegetables for. When I first started, though, as a part of the business, when I started helping my husband get that going, I didn't know what I was doing as far as marketing goes. When my husband first started our CSA farm, I was just like taking care of our brand new baby. I wasn't really actively involved in the farm much at all, aside from occasionally helping pack boxes. But I began to notice that he was struggling with managing the customers and just communicating with them, letting them know what to do with the food. And so I said, well, let me start writing them a little newsletter. And that was kind of the beginning of everything. I sort of suddenly became in charge of marketing without asking. And I didn't know how to find customers. I didn't know how to do any of it. And so there came a kind of a breaking point when we had to jump to like 400 members from 200 members in one season. And I just was like, I need to learn what I'm doing because there were no classes at conferences on how to do marketing. And so I had to go outside the industry to study it and practice it. And that's when I ran across like the online marketing thing that's, I think a lot of people are aware of now. But I began to study the rules of online marketing. I followed a ton of influencers. I started listening to podcasts about marketing. And I thought, what if I applied this stuff to our CSA farm? And I focused mostly on like customer retention at first, like really taking care of the current customer and over-serving them and teaching them how to be successful with the product. And that like helped with our retention numbers. And then after that, I kind of shifted to like social media and like, how do you get people on your email list and how do you build leads? And over time, I would say pretty quickly, within like 6 to 8 months, there was a dramatic difference in our sales. I suddenly became like confident that I could replicate our
Yeah.
results year after year. And it was so stark and amazing that I couldn't wait to share it with other farmers, because I'm like, I know there are other farmers like me who struggle with this, and like they need to know about this stuff. And so I created this Facebook group, a private Facebook group for farmers. That was my very first act, where I would show up like every week, and I would just share something I had done and what I was learning. And there were like 4 people in this group for like almost a year. And then suddenly it kind of took off, but I just kept showing up. And then that morphed into a podcast. I created a few online workshops, and now I've turned into this mentor for other farmers around the world, really just trying to teach them and inspire them that, it is possible to create consistent revenue and to build a marketing system that will work for your farm. So that's what I'm passionate about. I just want to make people confident, and I want to inspire them.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. It's such a,
Yes. Well, Corinna, I give you a lot of credit, because the marketing world these days is very, very complex. I mean, we're being inundated with new marketing strategies, algorithms. How do we market ourselves and get ourselves seen? I mean, there's like a million different people telling you to do it a million different ways. And I know we have a lot of new farmers who are trying to wade through all of this advice. And it can be big and scary, especially if you're not somebody who's like just so open to sharing themselves or what they're doing, or they don't feel confident in their business. So I guess, what advice would you give some of our newbies who are just dipping their toes into the marketing world amongst all of the information that's coming at us from every different direction?
I think what I would say is, you're right. There are always new, different ways to implement marketing. Every month there's, now we should try TikTok, and now we need to do this, and now we need to do that. And it can be super overwhelming. You sort of feel like you're pointing and shooting, and you're not really sure if you're effective. So what I would say is, a brand new person should really take the time to learn the framework of marketing. And what I mean by the framework is, what is the concept of the customer value journey. Like, if you were to go to marketing school, no matter what specific strategy you actually end up using to build your business, it all kind of falls back onto this skeleton, this basic framework of traffic, leads, conversion, fulfillment. I mean, those are sort of the 4 pillars. And when you look at the specifics of how you do that, well, those can change based on the industry, based on what's coming out, this year or next year. But if you can understand, like, I need to have an element in my business that gets brand awareness, like gets people to know I even exist. And I need to have an element in my marketing system that causes a person to turn into an actual lead that will attract a certain kind of right, perfect person into my brand. And I need to have an element in my business then that's going to actually get them to buy the first thing, right? That's the conversion point. And then I need to have a fulfillment strategy. Like, I need to have something that makes sure that when they get the product, it's awesome and they love it. And then they want to come back and buy more, or buy that thing again, right? So I guess I would say educating yourself on what is that overall framework is super helpful. What are those key principles? Because the individual strategies may change over time. Facebook may not be around in 10 years, but the strategy, the framework will always be there. And as long as you know what the framework is, you can kind of pivot and try lots of different strategies to make sure you're hitting each of those different elements. I would also say that it's really important to make marketing a focus in your business, because if you do so at your peril, like if you don't, you do so at your peril. Because in order to make money in your business, you've got to make offers. You have to learn how to make offers. You have to learn how to attract a client. You have to learn how to warm them up and make them want to buy your stuff. You have to know how to fulfill and serve them. So these are kind of the key pieces that, if you know what the framework is,
I think social media confuses marketing, in my opinion, because I think people's perception of marketing is social media. And they're like, I'm not being seen, or I'm not being, this isn't being seen. And it's like, well, that's not marketing. That's like a component, right? It's a piece of like a tool that you can use in that, but to like have an overarching understanding of what marketing means. Because I truly didn't I don't feel like I really understood that until listening to podcasts. And, that's how I found your podcast. And I've done other programs and I've read books and those sort of things where I needed to sort of understand even what marketing meant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that from a lot of people who come into my ecosystem where they think that marketing is social media. Like that's what they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
working on. When I say, "What are you doing with your marketing right now?" It's like, "Well, I do this on Facebook, I do this on Instagram, I'm making reels." And that is one small component that could be in your marketing
Mm-hmm.
system, but
Yeah.
you don't have to use social media. As long as you're hitting that awareness phase in a different way, that would be fine. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like there's so much more to it than just getting onto social media. So I love that you brought that up because that is a very
Yeah.
common
And it can make
problem
people
that I
feel
see.
defeated. I mean, truly, there's social media can be one of those things where it's like, well, you hear, I don't want to put myself out there in that way. And, or I don't have anything interesting to say. And like, or this isn't getting very many views. And
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or it's a time suck. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a
Yeah.
crazy
for
time
sure.
suck. Like people spend
Yeah.
hours on it and it's like, is that actually
Yep.
driving conversions for you?
Yeah, just like an interesting thought that we just recorded our year in review episode. So I've been thinking a lot about like what worked good this year. And this year I really tried to like reframe my marketing into more of I'm serving my customer. So for me, it's like that education piece in my marketing so that they feel like they've learned something or gotten something new from me when
Mhm.
they get to talk. And so it wasn't marketing doesn't, in my opinion, always have to be a concentration on sales. Is that the
Mhm.
end goal? 100%. But I think people just want to feel valued. They want something positive from you. They want to learn from you. So I think once I started like, integrating that education piece into some of the marketing strategies, it got easier, just in general, easier for me. And like with the CSA, I mean, do you kind of see that with what you do? I know you do a lot of like coaching with recipes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and absolutely. We do a lot of education once they've purchased. We also do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
education before they purchase. They kind of have two different purposes, but it's important to educate your customer on how to actually be successful with your product. And I think that's where that education
Mm-hmm.
piece falls. It's something called the excite phase. It's one of the pillars that's in the framework. You need to have some kind of a system around how do I make sure that my customer knows how to use this product well, achieves success, achieves their desired transformation. Some of them will innately know how to do that before they buy, but many of them won't. And so if you don't help them and guide them through that and give them a few tips or some quick wins, then that's where you have retention issues. People feel like, well,
Mm-hmm.
this was a waste of money. I'm not doing this again. Education on the front
Mm-hmm.
part of the sales funnel before a person decides to actually buy is, I think, kind of leveraging the law of reciprocity where there's an exchange of energy. Like, I'm going to share this information with you, and one of the laws of the universe is like, when I give out goodwill, then it comes back to me. And there's this sense of the customer or the potential customer wanting to do something in return, feeling this gratitude, like, oh, they taught me this, they helped me grow, I'm so grateful,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be around a person that's going to continue to invest in me like this. And then they want to
Mm-hmm.
reciprocate in kind, and one of the ways they can do that is by buying your stuff. So I think both of
Yeah.
those things are kind of happening.
Yeah. I feel like I struggled early on with understanding when I was doing my marketing, like who my customer really was, and I still
Mm.
think something you said to me, Corinna, when I was on the podcast was, you said, it seems like you have a lot of different needs and avatars, like customer avatars within my business. And honestly, that stuck with me because of the place I'm at in my business now is I wear all the hats and sometimes I just get real exhausted with what I'm pushing or marketing, right? And I'm feeling
Mm-hmm.
like, man, is my customer feeling the same way? Like I'm hustling you pick and weddings and this and that and that. And so where I'm feeling spread thin, and all of these different needs and avatars, I'm like, this is sort of I could see this being an issue for me and feeling like I want to simplify. I ultimately think it's going to make my business better. It's going to make me
Mhm.
a little bit more sane, more focused, my marketing more energized. I see all the positive things that are with that. There can also be a thread of, I think as a culture, we struggle with scarcity mindset versus abundance. And that would be fear. And so it's like, oh, well, what if I cut something out that means less money. So where I'm rambling with all of this is I think a lot of farmers are all in the same boat. We're like starting this new business with these new businesses and we want to do all the things. And it seems counterproductive to sort of like hone in on a specific enterprise or an avatar. So can you talk a little bit about like what an avatar is if people think that I'm just talking about some movie out there, like if they've not heard that marketing term yet? Wasn't that a movie? It was a movie, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
And then
Avatar.
like how to identify those like within your own business. So can you like talk about that a little bit today? Because that's really ultimately what we're going to talk about today is just, I should have started with that. I got too damn excited that you were on here. I buzzed right past that part. That we're going to talk about how to like dial in a CSA subscription, a flower subscription, and what that avatar looks like and sort of walk you through this whole process. Because I know that's something that we get asked all the time in the insiders, and to say like, I'm a new farmer, like how do I even market a CSA subscription? And so to sort of like walk you through that process is what we kind of want to do today. So
Yeah, well, I'll start out by like just defining again what a customer avatar is. In the
Yeah.
marketing space, this is sometimes called the ICA for ideal customer avatar. And this is the concept where like it's basically the detailed profile of your perfect potential client. So if you could clone somebody that's currently a client in your business because they're so amazing, like who is that person? What are their qualities? And it can include things like demographic. It often includes demographics, so their age, their gender, their income, their education, stuff like that. But it's also deeper than that. It's, you know, what values do they have? Is there a common thread? What do they want? Is there something that they all want as it relates to your product? Is there a pain point or a problem they all have in their life as it relates to your product? What are their common questions that they have or concerns? How do they talk about your product or your industry or the pain point, the problem that you have? And so when you know, if you can see the patterns, when you know how your ideal client thinks, how they talk, what's important to them, it allows you to find more of them because you have such clarity in terms of the messaging that works for them. Like when you know how they talk and what they respond to, well, then you just put more of that stuff out there in your marketing and it will attract more of that kind of client. If your avatar concept is very fuzzy and generalist, like, well, anybody would love flowers. Well, that's not really true.
No,
Then you're gonna
right.
you're gonna go out with a more generalist message, and you're not gonna pull anyone in. So, the more specific you can be, this is kind of hard for people to grasp because they think specificity is bad. But the more specific you can be, the more likely you're going to be successful in hooking that perfect client.
And there's like a research phase of this.
Yeah.
And I know, I've heard this on your podcast before, Corinna, and actually I don't even remember what episode it was because you talk about it a lot, but I can think all of us have a customer who's like, you're like, dang, this is the best customer I have. Like the shining star, the ones who's always, giving kind words. They're telling everybody about you. You have that person, and you encourage me to interview that person. Like, what are the things that they're saying about your business? Like, what are the words that they're using? So I think you challenged me to interview 3 different, and I thought that they were different people. Like they would have different things, be saying different things, but really there were so many common threads between the 3 of them. Like they loved supporting local. That was being somebody who like seeks out a local product was one particular thing. It's not always just like women between the age. There's like some really specific things that come. So I think even if you're just getting started, even in that research phase, that was a really important piece for me. I know you break that down in one of your podcasts too. So what does the research phase look like for you these days?
Yeah, what I always encourage farmers to do is actually get on a Zoom call if possible and record it, because then you have this piece of information that you can transcribe.
Yeah.
And now you have the actual words that they've used. And I tell people to try and do 10 because I think that's a good sample size. If you interview 10 people for like 30 minutes each, you will have like enough data to build an amazing marketing campaign. And it has to be a
Mhm.
person, it has to be one of your clients that you anecdotally can kind of tell this is a good client. So I wouldn't be interviewing
Mhm.
someone who's, doesn't like you, complains a lot. Like that's not going to give you good information.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Those conversations, and then there's a certain kind of set of questions that I think pull out the gems for your
Mhm.
marketing, not yes or no questions, right? Like there's open-ended questions that you're trying to figure out what is the pain point and problem that I solve for you? What is it that you're after? What does transformation look like for you? What is that picture?
Mhm.
What are you hoping will happen as a result of my product? What were the stumbling blocks? Who else are you looking at besides me, or who else were you looking at besides my farm, and
Mhm.
why? What ultimately was the trigger that caused you to decide you wanted to do this thing? What was that moment? Like all these little pieces of information, and you ask like 10 people those same questions, and you will start to hear the
Mhm.
same results. Now, not everything's going to be the same, and you're paying attention to the red threads, the ones that do get mentioned by most of your people, and that's going to tell
Mhm.
you, it's going to be a small subset of information, but that's going to show you
Mhm.
these are the words, these are the values, these are the
Mhm.
problems that I talk about on my marketing, on my website, in my social, if I'm doing YouTube, if I'm writing emails, wherever I'm putting out content, like this is the stuff that I speak about.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you think this is something that should be done every few years, or like how often, because I'm like sitting here taking notes, like I've sat through this. I actually took the people to dinner. I'm thinking, shoot, a Zoom would have been
Wow.
easier. I know. I
Mhm.
wanted to go to
Yeah.
dinner too. So, but yeah, that was like, I just, went and sat and chatted with them. And so I'm just thinking, like, is this something I should be doing, continuing to do? Because I do feel like I need a refresh. And I think keeping it fresh in your business is important, but I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
I do think it's important to continue to do. I mean, I have a practice of interviewing one of my customers every month. Sometimes I miss in the heat of the season, but just to keep my finger on the pulse, is this
Mhm.
person saying similar things? Another way that you can do it though, once you kind of get to a size where you have a business that's kind of churning and running, there are other ways that you can get at this information by sending a survey, for instance,
Mhm.
that if I have 400 people in my CSA, and even if only 25% of them actually fill it out, like that's 100 documents that come back to me,
Yeah.
and I have a lot of data there that I can see common language.
Mhm.
Another one that works is to have like a question post in my Facebook group. That'll drive a lot of comments, and I can see what are some of the common threads in the comments. So there's some little tricks of the trade
Yeah.
to just touch
Mhm.
base and make sure that things are still jiving.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things you can't like skip
Mhm.
around. Like you can't just take some other flower farmer's information because those customers are
Yeah.
specific to you. Like they went to Shannon for a very specific reason versus, what my customers are coming to me for. So there's like unfortunately no really like easy slip,
Mhm.
or like work around with it. It's like actually having to sit down and do that work. So
Yeah, well, I will say, like, if you're a brand new farm and you don't have customers that you can do this with, then I would say go look at other CSA flower subscription websites and,
Mhm.
look at like 5 of them and see what you can tell
yeah.
from there. Or
Mhm.
go into their reviews. If they have Google reviews, you can go and read those, and that might give you at least something to at least start with. You can
Yeah.
put that onto your website.
Yeah.
So, thinking about your farm, Corinna, what are the different avatars that you have on your farm? And give us an example of like how you might describe that person. Like, what are you looking for, on your farm specifically? And we can talk a little bit about some of our flower farming ones too. But just curious as to how you answer that question for yourself on your farm.
Yeah, I would say that I have 2 primary ones that I have
Hmm.
4 technically, but there are 2 that are their revenue drivers.
Hmm.
So the first one would be I call her Molly, and she's a working professional who really values supporting local business. She values her health, and the fact that we're certified organic matters to her. She wants to know who her farmer is. That's a phrase that I hear a lot. I want to know my farmer. I want to know how my
Hmm.
food is grown. And she loves to watch the show Chopped. And so this idea of getting a box of veggies and she doesn't know what's going to
Yes.
be in
Yes.
there is like exciting for her, as opposed to
Hmm.
the clients or the leads that I have who are like, no, I want to be able to choose what goes into the box. I don't think this is for me. Like for Molly, she
Mhm.
doesn't want to think about goes in the box. She doesn't want to make that decision. She can't wait to see what's going to be in there. And she opens it up and she's like, what can I make with this? And she gets really excited about the idea of being in her kitchen and creating this masterpiece and seeing if it can be as good as something in the restaurant. So for her, the quality of the ingredient matters. She looks for that. She's looking for freshness. She's looking for variety, things that aren't run of the mill. And she's looking for inspiration. So the fact that we have this group of foodies that are all kind of, not
Mhm.
all of them, but a lot of them are like her. She loves to be able to see, what are they coming up with? What can I learn from them? And then I would
Mhm.
have someone like a Shannon, who is also very busy, has kids, is a little bit more restricted in terms of her time. And so she is looking for quick, easy meals, probably
Mhm.
eats out a few times a week, probably does a lot of stuff in her car. And so she wants to have
I'm
choices.
like,
Like,
that's me. My name's not
I
Shannon,
know.
but that's me. Your
I
name
feel like
is
very called
Shannon.
out.
I know. I'm like, okay, keep going. Keep going.
you should
This is
not be in my
me.
CSA then. No, I'm kidding.
No.
So this is the customer who's going to shop in my online store, who's just going to go in and
Yes.
pick out what she wants on the weeks when she knows she can actually come and get it at the pickup site, because some weeks doesn't
Mhm.
work for her, right? If you're in my CSA, like you got to be there every Thursday from 4 to 6. Otherwise you don't get it. Or you got to
Mhm.
come out to my farm later that weekend, right? So it's got to fit your
Mhm.
life. And so for a Shannon, she also values like eating great healthy food. She wants to know where her food comes from, but that convenience piece or that choice piece is a lot more important
Mhm.
to her. And so as a result, she's not going to be attracted to the CSA, or actually some of them have been in my CSA, but then they graduate out as their life changes. Like, oh, my kids are now in high school. I'm
Sure.
like constantly driving around. Like I can't do that anymore. And now they have this other option. Okay. So that's sort of
Mhm.
an example of the two primary
Yeah.
income streams in our business. I
Mhm.
would say I also have a few people that fall into the bulk buy category. Like they only buy from me when I'm like selling bulk corn, bulk tomatoes, bulk anything, because they're all about the deal and how can I, I'm a homesteader. I want to store this away. I want to can. I want to get the best
Yeah.
possible budget deal. Yeah, those are kind of the three really big ones.
So, I mean, it's okay to have more than one.
It is okay to have more than one.
Yeah.
It creates a little bit more confusion in your
Mhm.
messaging, but I wouldn't have a whole lot more than like 2 or 3, because I think then it does
Mhm.
dilute the messaging in all of your different platforms. Or it's just a little more
Mhm.
work. You have to really dial up those different messages.
So, do you feel like those avatars have changed for you over time as your business grows and those evolves, or do you think those stay the same? And then to piggyback that, do you think that someone can successfully market their farm and not have an avatar?
So I would say that your avatars do morph over time. In fact, when we first
Mhm.
started, our only avatar was the first one was Molly, like because that
Mhm.
was the product that we had. We just had a traditional CSA. You get what you get. You don't get upset. You got to come on this certain time and day. And then we started to notice that some of our customers wanted more flexibility. And so that caused us to create a product line for that kind of a
Mhm.
client and test it out and see, is this something that our farm system can handle? Are we willing to divert resources and build new workflows around this? And so we kind of pilot project it for a year,
Mhm.
and it was making enough revenue. We saw that it could scale and we were willing to continue to build that. And so that now, as a result of having a new product at the end of, for that kind of a client, we essentially have successfully created a second avatar. So that's sort of how it
Mhm.
morphed for us. Do I think that you can have a business without an avatar? I guess the way I would answer that question is that I feel like you may not know that you have an avatar. You maybe just don't know that you
Mhm.
do, right? So
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
every business has an ideal customer that is perfect for it. Perhaps you just haven't done the work to identify it. And if you did, you would really start seeing some crazy results. So I think it's possible to have run a business without really dialing in your avatar. But I'm just telling you,
Mhm.
you have one. You just need to go figure out
Mhm.
what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And make your job easier with marketing once you actually know that
Mhm.
information.
Yeah,
And
I mean, the benefits of having clarity around that are just, you're not going to be wasting as much time and resources, like if you're running ads, for instance, you won't be wasting as much money talking to people that, are not your people.
Mhm.
I also think it's going to give you more clarity about what content to be putting out into the world to try and find more of those people. You'll just be able to personalize your messaging everywhere on your website, social, all the places that you do your stuff, and you're going to be more
Mhm.
effective the more personal and the more
Yeah.
specific you can be.
I think people want also to like get everybody. They want all the customers. They want to, they want to like
Yeah.
attract this abundance. And I think part of there is an attract and repel component to this. And like, like I love that you said earlier too, like people get too afraid, they get afraid to be too specific, but like the more specific you are, like you said, you basically are like getting in their head. We've all had those ads where we're like, I've only thought that in my head. And now it's like right in front of me, And I think that's really what you want to kind of dial down into. And you're identifying the problem, a problem that they have, like what's their pain point, what is actually that you're solving for them, like what is the product that you're offering solve for them. And so yeah, I think that's an important point. So let's talk about the CSA customer. Can we like dig into that avatar a bit?
For the flower subscription?
Yeah, for the flower
Mhm.
subscription. Let's like dig into that. I know this isn't your like wheelhouse, but we're the flower people. We'll just be your little we'll play along.
Guinea
You
pig?
can guinea pig for you. Yeah. I've said so many times. I think I said it on your podcast too, but I said I could market a veggie farm like nobody's business. Sometimes there's like flowers. I'm like, it's a luxury item, thinking like the recipes and all kinds of fun stuff. I
Yes.
think like, man, veggie farmers, there's so much content out there. Here we are
Yeah.
growing flowers. So, but,
Sometimes
so
when you're
let
really close to your own product, though, I think it's harder to see it, right?
yeah,
And it can help.
this is true. There's lots of ways to market flowers. So just there's sometimes I think, man, I don't even cook really, but I could probably whip up some sort of recipe. It's a joke. I do that with my marketing. Like I share with my newsletter all the time that like my newsletter people know that I don't cook. And so every once in a while when I drum up a recipe, it's a real big deal in my newsletter. People comment. I did it last year. So it's a big deal if Lyndsay throws out a recipe. So anyway, how do we go about finding out this information, I guess, about like this avatar? Like where's the starting point with this?
Yeah, you've said this already before, but we start with identifying the problem or the pain point that many of your customers have that drives them to come check you out in the first place. And you might be thinking, there's a pain point or a problem for people buying flowers? And the answer is, yeah, kind of. I'm going to encourage people to go check out the book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. I don't know if you guys have talked about that on your podcast ever, but this is a fantastic book. It's kind of like my number one recommended read for all of my farm marketing school members because I think it's another great marketing framework. And Donald Miller's the author. He has a podcast too, by the way. He talks about how every customer has three levels of problems. And like the first one is the actual physical problem. The second level is the emotional problem behind that. And then the third, like ultimate level is the philosophical problem that you solve. And so like if we were going to think through that lens, like I like to use the example of somebody who wants to hire someone to mow their grass. Like the physical problem is my grass is too high. Like it needs to be cut. The emotional problem is like, my neighbor's grass looks amazing and mine looks like crap. And like, I don't want to be embarrassed and have people say like, who's that? Right. And then, the third one, like the philosophical problem, well, that one's a tough one. I'd have to think about that. That's not like good versus evil, but like, my
Yeah.
point is that there's usually like a feeling problem. And then there's like just the actual physical problem itself. So in the vegetable world, the problem is we're all hungry. Like we need to eat food. We get hungry. This is a recurring problem every day. But deep down, there's other reasons that drive someone to buy a CSA vegetable box. It's like, well, I feel disconnected from my food. I don't know where it's grown. I don't feel secure about like, does it have chemicals in it? Like, how do I know it's safe? My kids are eating it, or my kids are like eating like crud. And I want to make sure that I train them in these beautiful, like healthy eating habits and set them up for life. Like that's what I want this to be about. I'm creating food habits, right? There's other deeper levels going on. So like, what would that look like? I'm going to push this back at you. For a person buying flowers, what is that? Can you see like a physical versus a, emotional level distinction here? What would you guys
Yeah, I
say?
mean, I think I'm just thinking about my own flower CSA. I kind of have with my group, there's two different kind of people. There's a really intrinsic like self-care piece to the flower CSA. It's like I'm going to treat myself. It's the person who buys it for themselves.
Yep.
So that's a different person than the husband who's someone who's gifting it. So the person who's gifting it, his problem is it's usually a he. I hate saying him, or their problem is that they don't know what to get somebody who seemingly has everything. So they're like, how do I get, they don't really need another trinket. They need an experience, or they want to do something for them that maybe they wouldn't normally do for themselves. And there's that gift giving piece. And then there's the self-care piece. It's the mom, who writes in her order notes, I'm so excited that I get to, I'm treating myself each week with the quiet car ride to the farm to pick up my flowers. I'm going to get away from my kids for that short amount of time. And that is like a self-care component. So I'm curious, like with the flower CSA, like what do you think about having those two different, can there be two different avatars within a revenue stream? Because for me, I'm really seeing like two, just thinking about, my personal CSA.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that you have two really powerful messages that could be spinning in your sales messaging in different places for sure. I'm thinking about like I'm resonating with the treating myself, indulging myself.
Yes.
And every time I go and pick up those flowers, it's a vote for me, right? It's a I'm good enough. I'm worth it. This is a way that I remind myself every week that I'm amazing and beautiful. I'm also wondering, like for gifts though, like if you're that husband or guy, maybe it's not a husband, it could be a partner, but like if you're buying that present, maybe sometimes it's like, I want to be able to point to something that says I'm taking care of this relationship, or I'm trying to build goodwill. And this is a ritual I can put in place that makes me value this relationship, or try to show that I'm doing something to take care of it. Like, is that sometimes like the motivation? Or I want to make sure she knows I love her. And this is my way of being able to say that phrase every time I hand it to her.
Yeah, because there is a group of husbands that pick up the flowers for them, that their wives don't even come pick up the flowers. It's something that they come pick up and then hand deliver to them, because it's the action of me getting you the flowers that is what really counts. So it's just so interesting. Like, I feel like we speak in different seasons of what we're doing. So like right now during Christmas time, we're speaking to that gift giver a lot more than we are to the self-care. To me, the self-care piece starts coming in the spring when things are starting to warm up and people were going to get out, and so it's it's interesting to me, how we speak to our different customers within those different seasons of flowers, because it is a luxury item. I mean, what we do is a luxury item. I mean, even with veggies, like people do have to eat, but people really don't have to buy flowers. So I think that's marketing really comes into that, and how we're selling that is important.
I've heard of people who are using we have a flower CSA too. I don't grow them, but we have some people who tell us stories about, I pick this up and I bring it to my grandma at the nursing home every week. So this is the thing that brings cheer for someone in my family. And it's a way for me to show my appreciation and love for her. And I guess what I want to point out here is like, find out how people are actually using your product and catalog them, because each one of those vignettes is a potential marketing message. You can snap a picture of that moment happening with a customer and grandma in the nursing home and post it with their permission. But like, and now you've suddenly given someone an idea. That's how I could be using this, right? So finding out from customers, how are you actually using my product? And sometimes you're surprised, like, oh, I didn't know that was being done. Okay.
Mhm.
And you just found another way to market it.
We have an interesting thing that's happened with ours too, where people actually gift it instead of in lieu of flowers at the time of the funeral. They'll gift it to the spouse of someone who's passed, and so then it's like used in memory. So like they're receiving flowers maybe 6 months down the road
Mm.
in honor of the person who's passed, and gifting that share in that way. And I don't know why this just popped into my mind, but I feel like that when COVID was really the beginning of COVID in 2020 is like people were just way more in tune. I feel like to priorities of what really mattered, and I think we've all talked about it in the flower industry, and I think it happened with with just farmers markets in general. People wanting to source local and know where their food came from and feel like a connection and sort of grounded because everything around us was really spinning. But in the flower world, people were buying, for me, 10 bouquets at a time to leave on doorsteps of
Wow.
other people. Like, I'm not joking. I had multiple customers that were buying, 10 plus bouquets at a given time. And so I've always tried to that stuck with me when it happened because I'm like, that never left. We're now clouded with a whole lot of other things, right? Ball practices started and life is piling back on, and social media is we're addicted to our phones. Not that we weren't back then, but life clouds those priorities. And so for me, that's where I keep going. I'm like, that's not lost on people. That yearning where everybody, I mean, when I say we had a line from our farm down our road, it was like basically over a quarter mile long, where people were waiting an hour to potentially get one bouquet. I mean, it was the most insane thing. And I think it's because it made them feel good. And I think ultimately that's what flowers do, and so trying to like tap into that. I've always tried to remember that with my marketing, because I think deep down that self-care person, that's why they're buying. That makes them feel good and connected and slow. I think those flowers attach them to something that they don't have in their everyday life. That's what makes them feel. I think that's what makes the U-Pick so appealing and all those things, because it's like a desire that we want as a human that we aren't necessarily getting. Just, I guess I can market flowers. I don't know. I'm just rattled off some stuff.
Your comment earlier made me think about, when I was a new mom, how that would have been so cool to be getting a bouquet of flowers for, 2 months, just to when I can't get around and when I'm feeling bad about myself and overwhelmed. And that would be another
Wow,
opportunity to try and encourage dads, like, hey, get
good.
this subscription if you just had a baby.
Yeah.
So like identifying where are those moments when someone needs to feel important, needs to be told you're beautiful, you're worth it, you're amazing. Like that's what the bouquet is doing. It's sending that message. And where in life do we need to hear that? And that's probably why it was working in COVID too. Like people needed to be reminded of that message. You're beautiful, you're amazing. Even though I can't hang out with you, I'm thinking about you. I wish I could be hanging out with you, right?
Yep.
Flowers are pretty cool.
They are. They're amazing. They really do.
Yeah.
They do connect people in a way. There's so many memories are attached to flowers too. Like, I think even selling like a peony subscription, like how many people think about peonies and they think about their grandma, or their aunt or somebody that's special to them in their life. It's like, that's such an important way to, an easy way, I think, even to market that.
I lived in Austria for a year, and there was a tradition if you
Wow.
went to someone's house, like you always brought flowers. I don't think that's a thing here in America, but like you would always go to the farmer's
Should
market
be.
and grab a bouquet and then show up at their house like they were having you over for coffee
Aw.
or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a faux pas if you didn't do that. So I don't know where are those
We
moments
need to bring
too in
that
our
back.
world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we need to bring that to
Yeah.
America. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That needs to be our mission.
Yes.
Gosh, for sure.
So we've kind of like identified the pain points, or what desire does our customer avatar have. So we've done that. And something I know you talk a lot about, Corinna, is then developing like a sales funnel to start marketing and start speaking to those people with the eventual goal of them purchasing your product and finding value in your product. So can you explain to some of our new listeners who maybe don't know what a sales funnel is, like what is it, and then what does it look like in your farm, and how could we introduce a sales funnel into our own flower CSAs?
This is one of my favorite topics. I have a whole class just on auditing a sales
Yes.
funnel and building one for marketing school. But yeah, so the sales funnel is basically the steps, the milestones that are in your customer's typical journey through your brand, from the point that they're completely oblivious that you even exist, to becoming aware that you exist, to turning it maybe into a warm lead, like being warmed up, then buying your product, getting your product, and then wanting to buy everything you have. So like, what are the milestones? And I like to tell us like a metaphor or a story of a road trip. So when I headed out west long ago, I was moving from college town in Massachusetts all the way to my first job in Washington State. And I took a road trip with my brother and we mapped out our route, right? We had stops along the way that we wanted to see. And that's how we decided when we were going to get off the path and do something fun. And so we want to map out a similar journey for our customer, and you will see patterns. There are things that a lot of your ideal customers tend to do, experiences that happen to them, feelings they have, setbacks that happen, obstacles, questions in the buying process. And then ultimately, like the typical first thing they want, the typical second thing they want to buy, like you'll see patterns, and you try to map that out and you guide them to those next steps. And in my case, I was just trying to get to Washington. You're taking your people to the flower subscription. Like that's where you want to take them. So how do you get them there? And you can't just like bonk them over the head and make them decide to buy. Like it is a process, just like building a relationship with someone is a process. It takes time, and there are certain things that have to happen first, second, third. And so that's what the sales funnel is identifying what are those milestones. And again, when you know the framework behind marketing, you basically build a milestone for each stage in the framework. Sometimes there's 2 milestones in each stage, but like some are more difficult than others. You're just always taking people somewhere. So for example, at the top of the funnel, so this is when people first come in, you need to have a system in your marketing sales funnel that is attracting people in the first place. Like you're putting out content that's going to attract a person that will ultimately want to buy the thing that's at the bottom of this funnel. And so that a lot of times people immediately think social media. That is a common place to be putting content. But if you're a flower farmer, you're obviously putting content out about flowers because that is what you sell. So it could be your production, some of you out in the field, raising them, putting the seeds in the ground, cutting flowers. But we can talk in specifics in a second, like what that would look like. But there's just this awareness stuff at the top. And then you need to have like more content that's going to actually try to get them onto your email list. Like how can you get their contact information so that you can be cultivating and nurturing that relationship and trying to get them to buy the first thing. And then there is a moment, a milestone where you have a first offer, and maybe it isn't your flower subscription. Maybe it's something else that's a little bit more of an easy ask. So what is that thing? And when do you issue that offer? And then how do they actually pick up? What happens after they get that first offer? What do you do to make sure they absolutely love it? And then how do you issue the second and the third and the fourth offer? And what do you continue to give them to warm them up? What questions do you have to answer so that they feel ready to buy the subscription? Maybe they're confused how it works. And then there's, this, what else can I sell them once I've gotten them there? Like, can I get them to buy a gift subscription for someone else, right? So there's all these different steps that you're brainstorming, you're mapping them out, and then you're actually having to build these different assets and put them in the right spot and pull the trigger when it's appropriate so that they fire at the right time. So we can kind of brainstorm like what that would look like for a CSA subscription. That is essentially like what a funnel is. And a lot of it is very intentional. You've got these things along the journey. You've got these milestones firing all the time because people are constantly coming into the funnel, right? New people. And they need to see the stuff at the top of the funnel. Whereas you have people that have been in it for a while, they need to be seeing stuff that's at the bottom of the funnel. So you have to have it all sort of going at the same time. And some of it's going to resonate with different people depending on where they are.
I know. I feel like you need to probably do an audit on mine. I'm just sitting here thinking like, oh boy, let's do Shannon's. Let's not do mine. Let's see. Yeah, no. Let's okay. So let's walk through, because that's like my next question. Let's go through it. So like based on that, like talking about like a flower CSA, let's talk through like what content would be at the top, and like let's walk through that journey with that CSA customer. So
the way that I have my kind of funnel set up now, I have a lead magnet or some way that I got their email address and they're added to my list. From there, I think the next day or 2 days later, my first email is just like an about us. Like, wow, thanks for being part of our new community. Here's just a little bit about, here's our story, and it's just kind of, I'm not selling anything. It's just like, hey, thanks for signing up, and just trying to give them a taste about what's coming, what we do, who we are. It's really focused on who we are, because I'm really trying to connect with my customer at that point. I'm trying to get them to have the like, know, trust, factor. So that's kind of what my first email looks like. Am I on the right track, Corinna, or what would you say?
Yeah, I would actually say that that's actually pretty deep down into the funnel. So, the top of funnel stuff is like, because you already have them on your list. Like that's a
Yeah.
major accomplishment. You've gotten them to give you their contact information, which is sort of like, asking someone to give you their number when you're dating, right? Or you want to, you don't just like walk up to someone in the bar and like, give me your number. Like they'd be creeped out. So like, what is the stuff, that happens first? So I would argue, like, do you have SEO working for you? Like, do you show up on Google if someone does a search? What kinds of stuff are you putting on social media that, people can just sort of scroll and dabble, or somebody can tag them and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they don't have to do anything but stare at you from across the room, right? So I think top of funnel stuff for a flower subscription might include like a whole range of things just in social media where you're making people aware that you make beautiful things. So it could be like inspirational quote posts that are highly shareable, because that's really what you're selling, right? Is inspiration. Pictures of beautiful flowers, the people who are harvesting them, or customer photos of holding these gorgeous pictures. Some of those pictures we were talking about earlier, like the daughter with her mom in the nursing home surrounded by flowers, or the husband passing a bouquet of flowers to his wife at that critical moment. Those kinds of things that just make people aware, oh, I could be doing that. Flowers could be in my life. This is what it looks like to have flowers in my life.
Oh yeah. I love that. Because that's like,
Me too.
I'm taking this whole time. I'm just taking notes. I'm like, it's so nice to just get like a refresher of it. But it's like, you're right. They need to see themselves in your market. They need to see themselves in that place, right? To then want to like trust you to go to the next spot in that funnel.
Yeah, this is part of that research element, right? Where you are, what I like to tell my farmers is to imagine you have a video camera and you're following your customers around. What are they actually doing with the flowers? Like, capture that moment on film when the interaction happens, and you'll have maybe like 5 to 6 common things that surface. And those are the moments that you want to showcase, that life transformation moment, right? Where the transaction happens, the real emotional transaction. Or what are the thoughts people are having when they get the flowers? What would they say to themselves in their head? Put that on a quote card. Like, I'm worth it. Like those kinds of sentences and power phrases. Those are things you might put at the top of the funnel to help a person imagine this could be me. This is what's actually delivered. I think you could also do like challenges. You could have a little contest where you ask your own customers to send you pictures or answer certain questions based around your product. And then that also ends up spiraling, and you can use that same content to attract new people, because they'll give you beautiful photos or help your future clients see how the product could be used. How to arrange flowers. It could be a little video, different. Like, I was thinking, I have this vase in my kitchen and my flowers always go in there. And so I was like imagining, this would be a longer project, but like 8 short video moments that you store on your phone. Every time the bouquet gets tossed and a new one gets put in, new bouquet, old bouquet, like just capturing that on film, like 10 times, and then stitching it all together into a video. And the message there is like, I don't know if someone just saw that. Like, they're really quick, right? They're really quick frames, but the message there is like, I always get flowers. Like, you'd have to think of some cool words to go with it, but the subtle message is, this is a habit. This is like a part of my identity. Like, I always get flowers, and it's just what I do. So you're just brainstorming things like that. Like, how are people actually using it? Or the picture of the vase that's always there. I don't know. I'm brainstorming with you right now too, but that's what top of
Yeah.
funnel is. It's like making people aware of what the product is, but also showing them how it could change their thoughts, how it
Yeah.
could inspire them, how it could
Mhm.
transform their
Mhm.
life. And then then you get to sort of that middle of the funnel, which is where how do I get them on my list? And
Yeah.
that's a little tricky. I'm curious what you do for that. Like Lyndsay, how do you do that?
Yeah. So to getting them on my list, there's a couple different ways that I use. And one of them is, I mean, obviously we have a lead magnet, and that lead magnet for me on my website changes. I feel like I'm trying to get them with whether they're on my social, trying to drive them to that email list. And I think sometimes it naturally happens, whether they have a product that they're purchasing from us or they want to come to a workshop, they naturally get on that list, but it will change in season. So 7 tips on how to keep your flowers fresh. I have some ideas where I'm actually going to do, I think, a video next year of arranging flowers so that, it's one thing to say like, how do you keep your flowers fresh? And it's in a PDF, but I'm such a visual person myself that I love to see a very short video of like, hey, this is how you take a vase, because we've all dropped flowers in a vase, right? If you don't know what you're doing, you drop them in, they all open up in the center because the vase is too wide. And like, how do I teach somebody how to take a market bouquet and put it into a vase and make it look nice and presentable? And so that's one thing. So like obviously social lead magnet, we change it up seasonally to try to get there. But we're also, if they're coming to a farmer's market, we have the same thing. Like if our lead magnet is like, do you want those flowers to last for, 10 days? Then here's how. And it's like the little QR code and it scans and then it sends them that download. So there's those sort of ways. And then let me see what else I do. Oh, at our U-Pick, that's another way. We will ask at our U-Pick, it's like, hey, if you want to be able to keep those flowers lasting when you get home, like here's some information, on that. And we do the scan and we try to capture it that way. So I would say that's probably my most basic ways. If they're purchasing tickets from us or something like that, I do think I'm missing some opportunity to capture people when they're coming to my flower stand. So it's a self-serve stand, and I've identified that as like kind of an area where we need to have some rework because it's very new to us this year. It's not on my website yet. So
I want to point out here that like the lead magnet moment may not actually be for the CSA subscription.
it's not. Yeah.
The opportunity may be like for a slightly different offer, like because it sounds like I know that you are an inspiring person. A lot of people just love seeing your posts and they love your stories and your pictures. And you may just have to say, you want to get into my world, like I'm inspiring people, right? And they just want to get on your email list because they want to continue to be inspired by you. And then now the work is done. They're on your email list. So maybe it wasn't a lead magnet for the subscription. It was just to because you're an inspiring person and you're going to get more inspiration from me. And then once you have them on the email list, you have a process that warms them up to, hey, come to my U-Pick. Maybe that's your first offer. And then eventually you get them to sign up for the subscription. So the subscription may not be the first offer you make. It may not be the gateway, but I just want to point that out. But I also was thinking like, for me, I had a brainstorm here and you guys might hate this, but I was thinking about the power of the note. When I got flowers when I was younger, like it was the note that I couldn't wait to read. And I don't know if people still write notes when they deliver flowers. Maybe that's not done with the flower farming.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
If you were to go to a florist and order flowers for someone, like the note is a moment, right? You get to write out something. And so I was like pondering, what could that look like to bring back the power of the note to the CSA subscription, flower subscription, and that every week you have a really inspiring quote that's meant to make the woman feel like a badass, and every week it's a different one and they can't wait to read the note. Like what's her inspiring word today? But then a lead magnet might be 10 beautiful love notes you could write to your wife or something. Like you've got little templates for them or something. So when they use your flowers, they have like a little poem or they've got something that, I don't know, it's something to test. It might totally bomb, but it might be that the inspirational quotes would be something that a person would want to download because that's deep down why they're following you, because you're inspiring.
Yeah, I'm not even sure, thinking about my CSA subscription. Shan, what's yours? Like, I'm trying to think the middle of my funnel for my CSA subscription. I feel like do I have that? Like, I mean, I think what Corinna's saying, like obviously I've got some sort of sales funnel because I have people on my CSA, but where, like, do you have something specific for yours with your CSA?
That gives them an education piece, you mean?
Yeah, I guess like mostly what she was saying, like where I was talking about my lead magnet wasn't specifically
Yeah.
for my CSA subscription. I don't know that I even have this. I like that
Yeah.
idea she has where it's like
Mm-hmm.
specific to getting them
Yeah.
onto, if the CSA is what we're talking about and that's the bottom of the
Mm-hmm.
funnel, getting them to purchase
Yeah.
that, like getting them on
Well,
there.
the lead magnet that puts them in the CSA funnel is like my flower subscription guide, which is basically
Oh,
a,
yeah.
a PDF download that says, here's some of the flowers that might be included in spring. Here's some of the tulips. Here's what's, oftentimes featured, because the
Perfect.
the obstacle is that they don't know they don't know
Yeah.
flowers. Generally, people don't
Yeah.
know. So it's like a 3 or 4 page guide with each season, with like basically squares of the different photos of flowers that might be included. And then it has like a little one page that says, here's the perks, a 1 hour photography session. So it's really just so when I'm marketing the CSA, just in my social or in my email list, I'm saying, hey, are you curious about, what you might receive in the CSA, or do you want to know more? Download the guide. And then when they download that, I get their email address, and then they're tagged in my system as that they signed up for the CSA buyer guide. And then they go into the CSA funnel.
That's brilliant. That's a really good one. And you could include like
Mhm.
how it works. You can include how to take care of your flowers, answer frequently asked questions in that guide, right? It's basically a sales
Yeah.
promo brochure,
Yeah.
basically.
That's
Because
smart.
the CSA is so wonderful for off-season income for our farm. It's so that's the best thing about it. So for that, that's a huge part of our business. So I know maybe not every revenue stream deserves its own sales funnel, but in my opinion, that was kind of like one of our top ones that kind of gets its own level of attention, because it's kind of its own beast.
Yeah.
It has its own rules and all that.
Yeah. And then going
Yeah.
back to that funnel, like content
Mhm.
conversation, once you have identified a lead magnet, a way to get them on your list, now you've got them raising their hand and saying, I'm interested in the CSA.
Mhm.
With a guide
Mhm.
like that would be pretty obvious.
Mhm.
And then you could have like a sales email sequence, for example. That's something that
Mhm.
I would do, just like 5 emails that drips out automatically. As soon as someone subscribes to that guide, they're going to get an email every day or every other day for about a week.
Mhm.
And it's basically going to pitch different elements to try and get them to take that subscription. And so
Mhm.
that would be your sales mechanism. You might do it like over the phone, though. You might be like, oh, I'm going to reach out to this person individually over Messenger or over email and do an individual pitch and try to enroll them in it. You could do it that way too. But there's some kind of moment where you have a sales pitch element that's, after, to try and get
Mhm.
them to take the first step and actually
Mhm.
purchase and spend money with you. So that's an element that you'd build. And then you would need to have some kind of, I guess the next bottom level of the funnel is, how are you taking care of the client once they've purchased?
Mhm.
They've technically gotten to the bottom of the funnel, but how do you make sure that
Mhm.
they have a great experience? This is the fulfillment piece, so that they want to come back and buy it again. Or do you have more
Mhm.
things you could offer them after that? And then you have a process for pitching those offers so that you
Mhm.
can increase your revenue per customer. But a lot of farmers, especially in the CSA world, don't spend time thinking about the fulfillment piece. Like they deliver the goods and they trust that you know how to
Mhm.
achieve success with the product. This is really
Mhm.
important in like the vegetable space, because a lot of people
Mhm.
screw up how to
Yeah.
actually use the food and then they waste it. So what does that
Mhm.
look
Yeah.
like for a flower farmer? Maybe it's not as severe of a concern as
Mhm.
it is for people like me, but making sure you have your fulfillment dialed in, because if you don't get that
Mhm.
right, then people will just buy it once and then they won't come back. So
There's definitely a fulfillment piece for us. I mean, I would say even,
Mhm.
Shannon and I talk about retention often too, because a lot of times it is that somebody buying it as a gift. And so how do you get them to then convert that customer who it was the recipient of the gift to then be somebody that just
Mhm.
can't live without these flowers, right? So like, it may get purchased for them every year or it may not, which, retention is kind of where we're at. But the fulfillment stage for us too is like, they need to feel confident about arranging those flowers too. And like getting, even just transporting the flowers home can be an issue where somebody leaves them in their car for an hour, or like something as simple as like just the communication on that, and like having them feel all the feels that we've been talking about, and having success with the product is then going to convert them to a customer that's going to want to be a lifelong customer for you. So yeah, I definitely think that's definitely a piece of it for us as well. So is that basically, do you feel like that's the funnel?
The only part that would be left at the end was like, what other offers do you have besides just renewing your subscription? Like, can you brainstorm other things that this flower lover could buy? Maybe it's, do you have at some point at least 1 or 2 times where you ask them to buy a gift subscription for someone else? Or, hey, I'm going to give you an extra bouquet on your final week. And here's the catch. You have to give it to someone else that you think might enjoy a flower subscription, you know, and they get $10 off or whatever, if they decide to buy. And so do you. Like, you know, where do you have an opportunity to issue additional offers? Or do you do dried flowers? Are you going to invite them to your U-Pick? Like, when do you make them aware of all the other ways that they can come in and binge on your flowers?
I know. I feel like I'm interviewing, but I feel like I'm just, are you in a trance too? Because I'm like, I have so much stuff, especially, but I feel like amped about it because it's like going into the new year and feeling like there's so much potential to like refresh and get charged with that stuff again too. It's like so important.
Just thinking about the retention piece too. And I feel like maybe it should be paid attention to even more, because it's so much easier to retain a customer than to get a brand new customer. So it's like, I guess, what advice, what have you seen work on your farm for that retention piece? Because I know, like, I modeled one of like an early bird offer off of one of your podcast episodes, like trying to get them right away to re-up while they're in the feels of, you know, having their current flower subscription. So what are some ways, like retention wise, that have worked really well for you on your farm, Corinna? Like, what are some of those tactics that you use?
This is a powerful question. And I often encourage farmers to pay first attention to their fulfillment before they do the rest of their funnel, because you're right. You got to close that revolving door. And for us, the way that we have built retention, there's several, but I would say one of the key kind of philosophies is that people come for the vegetables at first, but they stay for the community. And so I try to find ways to create community, a community identity as a CSA member. Again, kind of like building a church. Like, how can I help them meet each other? How can I help individuals in the community feel like a star? Like, this is how I have a Facebook group. And I think this is helping me because they're able to go in there and post things that they're making with the food. So they're becoming experts within our group space. There are people tagging, oh, you've got to ask Tara about that. Or so-and-so is the grilling expert, right? And they begin to like develop their own personality and identity within the larger community. They feel special. They feel seen. They feel important. And I wonder if for like a flower farm, if, you know, people come for the flowers and they stay for the what? They stay for the, is it the inspiration? Like, what is it that they would miss if you suddenly just stopped? And so if it, let's just say it is inspiration, like how can you encourage them to, or maybe it is community, and like what you need to do is help them inspire one another somehow, finding other people like them that value and have that identity of, you know, I'm a flower lover. Like, I'm not just, I'm a flower lover. Like, I love myself. Maybe that's like
That's
what
what
some of
it
them are
is.
saying, you know?
Yeah. I feel like for me, that's where it is. It's like, I think, you know, I've sort of, my community is sort of changed in some ways as I've changed, and sort of dialed more in on my own self-care and prioritizing myself, and, you know, in the season of life that I'm in. And that has really pulled in that type of customer. And I really think that if I stopped my CSA subscription, there would be, and I feel that way about a few things with my farm, where there's just like this, well, how am I going to like get those feelings, right? Where the people are like, they feel good about the thing that they're doing, and they also feel good about what they're supporting, and what that whole thing, the whole farm means to that person. And so I think that's great. I think that's a great answer to that question, because that's why people are buying. They're buying with the feel, you know, emotion and what they're getting from it versus the actual product itself. So
Yeah, what would they miss? And then figure out how you can leverage that.
Okay, so Corinna, do you just want to like recap? Because I know we've just talked about a ton of information. I know I have 3 pages of notes right here, no joke. And I'm sure everybody else does too. Do you want to just like sort of recap for us with like everything we sort of talked about today with like some bullet points to get their, avatar up and running and whichever sales outlet they want to use it for?
Absolutely. So I would say the first thing is to identify who your primary customer avatar or avatars are and do some research on them. Take some time. It's going to be well worth it to figure out what are their primary pain points or problems. What is the desire of their heart? What is the transformation that they're seeking and that your product will deliver on? And if you can identify what those are, you're going to be like way far ahead in terms of your marketing because you will know the message that you need to put out there. You will use their words as your marketing. Second of all, the next step is to set up kind of or outline or wireframe your sales funnel. How are you going to capture that customer? How are you going to attract them and get their eyes on you? How are you going to warm them up? What is your lead magnet going to be if you're going to try to get them on your list? What's your first offer going to be? How are you going to pitch the sales offer? Getting clear about that and building that system. How are you going to excite the customer, make sure they love the product, right? Like just building out a visual map of like, how do I want to move people through this journey? And then the third step would be to identify, well, where do this unique subset of humans, where do they live? Like, where are they hanging out so that I can go attract them in the first place and get them into my funnel, and start building those assets so that they stitch together and start working.
Well, Corinna, thank you so much. I can only speak for myself. I'm sure I'm speaking for Lyndsay that even us, we always love like learning right alongside our listeners. And today was the perfect example of that. So I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. If they want to dive deeper with you, learn more about marketing, get to connect with you, how can they do that?
I guess I would send people first to my podcast. So I have the My Digital Farmer podcast. It's the thing I do best, the thing I'm most proud of. And it's a weekly show for farmers where I teach you the farm marketing principles and I interview guests from time to time. Lyndsay has been on the show, so you can go back and look for that episode. And then I also have something called Farm Marketing School, which is my monthly online membership. It's for farmers to help them build out their marketing pieces of their sales funnel. We work on one project at a time. It's a DIY online school. I think there's 10 projects in there right now. You can go in and slowly get that marketing funnel built. And you can go to mydigitalfarmer.com/FMS to learn more about that.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Corinna. There's a lot of Ohio girl power on the podcast today, which I love that.
Always love that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Really learned so much from you today.
Oh, wasn't that awesome? That was so much fun hanging out with them. I love it when I get asked to go on to another podcast and interview. So thanks, Shannon and Lyndsay. Really enjoyed that. Hey, if you haven't checked out their podcast, please go do so. I'm going to pitch it till the cows come home. So it's called The Dirt on Flowers. Look for it wherever you listen to your podcasts and subscribe. Now, you can find today's show notes at mydigitalfarmer.com/254. Please share this podcast with another farmer friend. You can grab the link and text it to them or just post it in a Facebook group. Let people know that I exist. And don't forget, if you want to get more marketing mojo for your farm, if you want to get better at it, you can get onto my email list. I have some things to send your way. Go to mydigitalfarmer.com/subscribe, and that's completely free. Or if you'd like to work more intently with me, you can join Farm Marketing School. Head to mydigitalfarmer.com/FMS. Don't forget, I'm also on Instagram, especially inside of Instagram stories. That's like where I like to hang out the most, at mydigitalfarmer. You can follow me there. Thanks for joining me today, you guys. Have a great week. I believe in you.